Alright, it's time for an update and forecast on the Mosquito Fire. Throughout this video, we're going to first take a look at it from the satellite imagery, then we're going to look at that time lapse from the ground, kind of look at a map to get our bearings to know where this fire is, go over some of the current evacuation orders, warnings, some of the resources on this fire. We're going to look at things like fire history, where the recent structure or where the structures are on this fire or around this fire, and then finally we're going to look at that fire weather forecast to see if there's any good news on the horizon, because fire weather conditions have been fairly critical this week with that ongoing heat wave in California, some triple digit temperatures, and as you can see right there, that's a little sneak preview of what's been driving a lot of the activity on this fire. Very dry conditions out there. So the first thing that I always like to do is just look at the satellite imagery. This tells you a lot about what's going on with the fire just by looking at this. For example, you notice some smoke coming off of it earlier in the day, but not all that active. And then it's as you get into the afternoon where your temperatures increase into the triple digits, relative humidity drops down into the teens. Reason that's important is just the drier conditions are, the drier the fuels get, and then the easier it is for that fire to spread. And I would say this right here is the most active wildfire that I've seen this season. And I've been watching the fires fairly closely. And the other thing that you can tell from this imagery right here is the direction that the smoke is going. And it almost kind of seems like it's going every direction except for west. You notice at first, most of it's going directly towards Lake Tahoe. Then we got some of that southerly push there and then some north as well. I would imagine we just have so much rising motion on this fire that you'll be able to see right here that you can almost think of it like a little just hot spot right here, or a giant hot spot right here. Get all this rising motion, the air rises, and then you can't just have a vacuum at the surface. So then you got air rushing in, and then that leads to some erratic fire behavior and helps to spread the fire as well. So next thing we can do is just kind of get our bearings on this fire to see exactly where it is. Looks like it's going towards Michigan Bluff right now if it's not already in there. Oxbow Reservoir is on the southern edge. We have Volcanoville down here towards the southwest and Forest Hill towards the west. And I can't officially confirm this yet, but I did see one tweet that said that the fire was burning some structures near Volcanoville. Again, can't confirm that yet, but I'm going to try to go through some of that kind of information in the longer form live stream, and that'll start after this one. But right now, that's just where the fire is, and it's interesting to see that where that red shading is where the previous fire perimeter is. Where those red dots are is where some of the more recent hotspots were located, and you notice pretty much all the way around the fire. Sometimes you'll see dots just on one edge of the fire, meaning the winds were blowing in one direction, and then the back end of that fire might be creeping a little bit, but not all that much activity. This one looks like we're seeing activity throughout the entire perimeter, and we'll look at another map in a second which will possibly confirm that right there. But first, I do just want to show the current numbers on the Mosquito Fire. It's up to 13,705 acres, and unfortunately still at 0% containment. And every time I check these evacuation orders, they're expanded. So I'm not actually going to spend any time going through all these orders and warnings. What I will say is that the reason I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that is because by the time you're watching this video, most likely these orders will have been updated again. So the best thing to do is either go to watch duty. I put the link for that in the description of this video, or you can go to Inciweb. I also put the link for that in the description of this video. And then there's evacuation information page, and it looks a lot like that. And finally, one of these evacuation maps added the fire perimeter to the map itself. So that's that purple color right there. So it does give you an idea of where some of the mandatory evacuations are. That's the color in red. That means basically leave immediately if you haven't left already. And then that more yellowish color is evacuation warning. that's where, personally, if I'm in an evacuation warning, I just pack up my stuff and head out and try to find somewhere to go. And I have had to do that a couple times. But again, that's the new evacuation orders and warnings that are in place. Do just want to check out some of the resources on this. We have 1,700 personnel. That number, I believe, needs to be updated. The more recent one looks to be that 13,705. And then current weather is really my area of expertise. I'm a broadcast meteorologist at KSBW, so I always mostly look at the weather aspect of fires. Weather concerns today, we were talking about this in yesterday's video. Temperatures over 100 degrees, very low relative humidity, and then winds in the fire area gusting to 25 miles per hour combined with steep terrain. So you're basically checking every single box of the fire behavior triangle. You have fuel, weather, and topography. With the fuel, you can see it in this live shot most likely. Lots of fuel out there. A lot of it's exceptionally dry because of the drought going on in California. When it comes to the weather, warm temperatures, very dry air. Winds not as bad as they could be, but strong enough to lead to some spotting. And then topography, also very steep as well. If we actually want to check out the topography, we can zoom into Google Earth right here. And mostly interested in this area around right here, looks to be Volcanoville. Looks like we have a canyon right here, and then we have Forest Hill over here. So if you don't know, fire likes to move uphill. So kind of the concerns here, let's get it oriented back towards north. The concerns would be if it keeps moving through this canyon right here, and then we're able to go uphill towards Volcanoville or Forestville. As of right now, if we look at the direction the smoke is going, most of it is going towards the east, or more recently towards the north and the south as well. Seems like it's every direction except west, which is actually some good news when we think about the structures in Forest Hill and Volcanoville, because that's actually going to be trying to push the fire mostly away from those communities. But again, based on how much activity we're seeing on this fire, I would say the most active fire that I've seen this year, pretty safe to say that it's probably just burning in every single direction right now. Now, one way we can kind of get an idea of all that going on, we can look at the CalTopo map right here, where right there that actually kind of shows exactly what we were just talking about. Those red dots represent more active growth, and you notice it's around the entire fire perimeter, not just one side of it. So it does look like it is growing in every direction. One thing that we can do that I'm going to put a big disclaimer on this always overestimates the size of the fire, so take this with a grain of salt, but sometimes it is useful to see kind of the overall direction that it's spreading. We turn on GOES detections. Looks like most of the new heat being picked up is towards the northeast. And that would actually kind of make sense based on the wind models we were looking at yesterday, and then also the direction the smoke seems to be moving right now. So let's just go back to Modus and Veers right here. If we want to look at the structures, that's what I was talking about, with most of the structures being on the western side of this fire. So that is where, I guess, if you need some silver lining with this, obviously there are a lot of structures around this fire that are currently threatened. But if you do need one silver lining, it appears most of the wind is blowing away from where we have the largest amount of structures. Now, where some of the bad news comes in, if we look at fire history, not a whole lot around the Mosquito Fire. We have a few of these burn scars, but they're pretty old, 2003, 2006. Yeah, that's not really going to do that much. In that time, your fuels can grow back. And then between the fire and where we saw a lot of those structures popping up, there's no fire history. So that just means there's a lot of fuels still in that area. So A lot of fuels, steep topography, we've looked at both of those aspects. Now let's just check out the weather aspect. We could look at the station in Forestville. Looks like the max temperature today was 101 degrees with a minimum relative humidity of 15%. So that's actually warmer and drier than yesterday, which goes along with the fact that the fire activity looks more active than it did yesterday. Now, the other thing we can do is look at the forecast for tomorrow to see what kind of conditions we're going to be working with. Looks like right here shows Friday being even drier than today, with relative humidity dropping into the single digits. That indicates that we're actually going to be more active tomorrow, temperature-wise, right around 100 degrees again, so very warm, dry conditions. Question mark with the winds. Looks like we have those same 25 mile per hour wind gusts, mostly blowing up towards the northeast. So if I had to make a prediction for the Mosquito Fire, I would say we are going to see even more active behavior tomorrow. Looking at the fire history, doesn't look like there's any recent burn scar directly up towards that northeast section. That's the direction the winds are going to be pushing tomorrow. It's also going to be extremely dry and warm. So I would actually predict more activity tomorrow than what we're seeing right now, which once again might be an ambitious call because that's about as active as you are ever going to see a wildfire. So I think the moral of the story with this one is very active conditions on it. Warm, dry conditions are expected to continue. New evacuation orders and warnings are in place, so this is definitely going to be a wildfire that we follow continuously over the next few days and quite possibly even the next few weeks. So right now I'm going to wrap up this one. I'm going to do a short, concise version of this. I know some people don't have time to watch a 12-minute video, so I also do a 2-minute one. And then I'm actually planning on just going live for a long period of time where we're just going to dive into this, the Fairview fire, the hurricane that could actually bring some thunderstorms to California that could bring flooding and rainfall, which could potentially be good for wildfires, or it could bring erratic winds and lightning, which could be bad for fires. So if you want to see all that kind of content, you can subscribe to this channel where I'll be doing wildfire forecasting videos throughout the rest of this season. Hopefully this video was helpful, and thanks for watching.